Purdue coming off of a resounding, somewhat victory over Oakland on Friday night is going into a game against Alabama, a team with a kind of a off to a hot start with a big win over St. John's, 103-96 in Madison Square Garden. Purdue is traveling down to Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a true road game as the Crimson Tide were in Mackey Arena last year. So Purdue's returning the favor going on the road to see a really, really tough Bama team that, has been at the top of the SEC for the last few years, which has been just a fantastic conference. So it's going to be the first real true road test for this Purdue team. It's going to be the first true test in general for this Purdue team. I kind of expect it to be the first time we'll see Trey Kaufman-Renn this year, but we'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll let Ethan kind of take it away from here with his general thoughts on Alabama.
Yeah, Purdue fans at this point should be pretty familiar with Alabama. We've played them each of the last 2 years. Neutral site 2 years ago, and we kind of got our big statement win of the non-conference season when they came to Mackey last year. This is very much a Nate Oates Alabama team. They're going to play fast. They're going to get up and down the court. They're going to shoot a lot of threes, and they're going to take a lot of layups. And they're not going to do anything in between unless your name is LeBaron Philon. So Purdue can expect this to be a pretty fast-paced game. Based on how Purdue has played the last 2 games, it seems like the Boilermakers are also looking to run a little bit. Now, I don't think a Matt Painter team will ever play as fast as a Nate Oates team. I don't know if any team will ever play as fast as a Nate Oates team at the high major level. But we're going to probably see a lot of quick outlets from both sides here. I would expect this to be a style of game that Purdue fans probably aren't used to watching their team play, just because Bama's going to push the pace at every opportunity. And if Purdue is trying to get transition opportunities, it's going to lead to a lot of fast-paced basketball.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Through 2 games, Alabama is second in the country in adjusted tempo, average possession length under 15 seconds. Like, this team wants to run up and down. They want to shoot a bunch of threes. They haven't shot fantastic, I don't believe, but unless I'm completely reading the Ken Palm sheet wrong. But this team wants to take a lot of threes. They want to get up and down. It's going to be a fast-paced game. I'm interested to see that if Trey Kaufman-Renn plays, whether or not that slows Purdue down at all, and whether or not they want to slow down at all playing a team that's so comfortable playing this fast. I've kind of been of the belief the last few years that when you're playing Alabama, the way to beat them is not to get into doing what they're good at, because if you play into their style, I think they're better at their style than just about anyone. And that style just can overwhelm you at times. And so playing into that really can play you into a disadvantage, but also this team has the best point guard in the country, Braden Smith. So a guy that lives in transition and, just completely dominates defenses when he has man advantages and things like that. So I'm interested to see what the tempo looks like in this game, but as of right now, it should be a very, very up and down game.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. St. John's, the team Bama beat on Saturday for their early marquee non-conference victory, got a win over time the 5th ranked team in the country in St. John's, and that final score was 103-96. And if you're a Purdue fan who's familiar with last year's Rick Pitino led St. John's team, that was more of a grinded out, tough, rebounding, defense based team that didn't shoot well. He completely reshaped his roster this offseason and just brought in a lot of high powered skill guys offensively, and kind of tried to beat Bam at their own game in that one, and obviously that didn't work in large part due to LeBaron Philon. You and I sat here on this very podcast a week or 2 ago in our sort of basketball season preview as a whole, and talked about Philon as maybe the most under the radar All-American candidate in the country. You and I both had him as second team All-American, and through 2 games that might have been selling him short, he's been phenomenal. He's averaging 23.5 points, 3 rebounds, 5.5 assists to just 2.5 turnovers. He's shooting 44% from 3, which was, weak spot in his game last year. I didn't shoot the ball particularly well. That's a low sample size, to be sure, but guarding Philon is going to define this game for Purdue. If we're able to keep Philon in check at all, you have to like our chances of pulling off the win, even on the road. But if Philon's able to just get wherever he wants on the floor and take every shot in the book, it could be a long day for the Purdue defense.
Yeah, this is the kind of CJ Cox, Jakari Harris moment where they have a real chance to make a statement against one of the elite guards in college basketball. If those two are able to kind of, work in tandem for over 40 minutes to really not give him anything easy and just make life difficult for Philon as much as they can, and Purdue is able to win the game because of that, I think that's a big statement on where the perimeter defense for this team can be, and kind of the idea that this defense is national championship good. I think this is kind of the moment for those two to solidify themselves as point of attack defenders for this team, and really kind of give this team something I don't know if they entirely had last year, even though it was CJ and Jakari largely in that role. Another year in a college program to develop and get stronger and learn how to play in the Purdue system. And this is a big moment for them, I think, and kind of what I'm looking for Purdue to kind of, hopefully take a step. However, I think another thing that Purdue struggled with is the rebound, and we've talked about that before. I'm not sure this is entirely an Alabama team that's going to completely dominate you on the glass. They've been a good rebounding team through the first two games, but they are a little bit undersized. We'll see what Aiden Sherrill is able to do as kind of like a 6'10" center. This is another good chance for us to see whether or not Clough is for real. I think, whether or not you're going to get more of a second half Oakland performance or a first half Oakland performance in this game. And that might be the difference for Purdue's season, honestly.
Yeah, they don't have, one sort of singular dominant rebounding force in the paint. They are at least for 2 games, a good team rebounding team. They only have one player averaging more than 7 assists, and that's their forward Amari Allen at 8.5. But they have 2 other guys averaging 6 or more, and then let's count this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other players averaging at least 3 rebounds a game. So they have some size on the perimeter, not a ton on the front court, but they do have some size on the perimeter, and their guards crash the glass pretty well, which is something that we talked about in the recap for the Oakland game that Purdue's guards have not been good at doing. So Bama's going to take a lot of early shot clock shots, and if Purdue can force them into being one and done, that's going to be huge for this. Those shots are going to fly early. If Bama's grabbing rebounds and getting extra opportunities, you're just asking for them to dump 95 plus on you, because eventually the shots are going to start to go in. There's only so many times you can leave a guy like Aiden Holloway open before he's just going to start banging threes. He had 21 in his season debut against St. John's, despite just going 2 of 7 from 3. And he's primarily a 3-point specialist. If he's scoring in transition, if he's scoring in other ways, that 3-point shot is going to come along, and he could be one of the most dangerous scoring guards in the country if that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, especially playing off the guy with as much gravity as Philon has, with his ability to create off the dribble and kind of draw defenses. But, you mentioned Amari Allen. He's really their best rebounder, I think. Aiden Sherrill, who I mentioned as their starting center, really, based on rebounding percentages, has not been a particularly strong rebounder. But Amari Allen has been, especially on the defensive end. He's been one of the better defensive rebounders, I think, so far. And this is going to be a big test for Trey Kaufman-Renn, because if he's back, that's going to be his matchup as Amari Allen. And that's another guy who's 6'8", 205, about Trey Kaufman-Renn's size. And, if Trey Kaufman-Renn wants to be seen as this All-American, he needs to be able to win on the glass against guys like Amari Allen. And I think that can happen. I think his physicality is going to help. But it's a big test for Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think, and how well the 4 spot for Purdue in general rebounds, because that's going to be the difference to me in whether or not this team is able to keep Alabama off the offensive glass and, kind of getting some extra possessions for Purdue themselves on the offensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor Bowen is a guy who had some skepticism from a lot of analysts coming up from a lower level. He's been really good so far, averaging 12.5 points and 6 rebounds a game. Front court depth was always the question with this Alabama team. Between Holloway and Jarrell Reitzel, who also made his debut against St. John's, season debut against St. John's, and then Philon, of course, they were always going to have one of the best backcourts in the SEC, if not the country. The question was always, do they have the guys in the front court? Noah Williamson was kind of the guy brought in to be presumably the starter at center, and the kind of reports throughout the offseason were that he just wasn't clicking. The Bucknell transfer just didn't quite look as advertised what they thought he could be, but he's been solid off the bench. And Bull Bowen, the Florida State transfer, and then Sherrell, who was a sort of high pedigree freshman who didn't end up playing a whole lot last year, have been really good for Alabama. Those three guys. So it's going to be a test for Clough and Jacobson, especially if they can hold their own against a smaller but feisty Bama front court. Then that is going to shift the battle to the backcourt. And as good as Philon and Holloway and Reitzel are, you have to like a backcourt led by Braden and Fletcher to hold their own against anybody, including this Bama team that they're 2-0 against in their pretty careers.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really look at it too, I believe that Purdue has the best player in the front court in this game pretty easily too, with Trey Kaufman-Renn. If TKR suits up for Purdue, I think he's far and away the most talented player in the front court. And I think, looking at the two teams, there's a world where Clough may be as good as Alabama's best front court player. I think if you get second half Oakland Clough, you see a guy who could really dominate this Alabama team on the boards with his size, just kind of being bigger than everyone Alabama has. I know that we've talked about how they rebound really well at the other positions, but the one knock on their rebounding ability is that center spot. They're just starting Sherrell. He hasn't been a very strong rebounder. Williamson has been a good rebounder, I think, in his limited minutes, but just it hasn't been good enough any other facet of the game really to be deserving of more than like the 11 minutes a game that he's getting right now for this Alabama team. So I think this is a chance for Clough too to really have himself a game if he's able to dominate the game size-wise and physicality-wise. I think the main thing I think this Purdue front court needs to do is match the intensity and the physicality of this Alabama front court. One thing that I think this Alabama team did carry over from last year is how physical and aggressive and just intentional they were in everything they do. And every time you go into a game with a NATO Alabama team, this game is going to be physical. It's going to be a war. And I think the St. John's game showed that. That game was a battle. It was athletes who were playing physical as they possibly could, as physical as the officials would allow them to, straight up, and sometimes more than that. And you're going to get into a battle. So it's going to be up to the Purdue front court to kind of set the tone, especially with the somewhat smaller guards in the Purdue backcourt to kind of set the tone physically in the front court and really dominate this game for Purdue.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned it. Clough, in theory, should be able to dominate on the boards in this game. He's struggled so far outside the second half against Oakland. He hasn't really done a whole lot of note in a Purdue uniform yet, but last year, Clough at South Dakota State went into this arena and absolutely owned Bama's front court, and that's when they were starting Cliff Amorie, who is a far better rebounder than anyone Alabama has on the roster this year. So jump up the high major aside, Clough's already proven he can dominate this game as a rebounder and as a scorer. He scored well in that game too, had a double-double against Alabama last year. So
didn't he have 31 and 17 in that game or something like that? Or am I?
Yeah, let me.
I believe Oscar Clough had just an incredible game against Alabama.
Yeah, let me pull up his stats. It's worth mentioning. This isn't just in theory, Clough, he could. Let's see.
Yeah, so on December 29th, 2024, which was last season, Oscar Clough had 21 points and 15 rebounds on 9 for 18 from the floor. Yeah, I mean, it was a 85 or a 105 to 82 loss for South Dakota State, but yeah, I don't think you can knock the impact that Clough had. He was an efficient 21 and 15. That's really, really, really good against a front court that I think is significantly better than what Alabama has to offer this year.
Absolutely. I mean, between Amorie and Grant Nelson, that was an all-star duo. Even though Amorie didn't have quite the impact I think they were hoping for when they brought him over from Rutgers, but that was still an elite pairing that Bama just can't match this year. Now, I do think as good as Mark Sears was for him. I think there's a chance their backcourt is better this year. They get Reitzel back from injury, Holloway in his junior season, more experience, and Philon's just straight up a lottery pick who's back for a second season. Like, I know that's a phrase that sleepers guys like, but the most valuable commodity in college basketball is a draft pick, an NBA player who comes back for his sophomore season, and that's what Bama has here in Philon. He is every bit a lottery talent who would have been a first round pick last
Yeah.
year, who was like, I'm just going to come back and go top 10. And even in a loaded class, I mean, we talk about all the insane freshmen at the top, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonsa, and guys like Nate Amon, Koa Pete have really impressed early in this. This is a very deep draft class. Philon's going to be a top 10 pick, knock on wood, as long as like injury or something else doesn't derail that. The Bama backcourt might be even better than it was a year ago, but the front court certainly isn't. And Clough dominated this front court last year, and there's a real chance Purdue is the two best front court players in this game if we get the Clough that played in the second half against Oakland with more confidence, picking his spots, using his physicality to grab rebounds. I wonder if playing next to Trey Kaufman-Renn might help him a little bit, give him a little more size next to him in the front court, so he won't be asked to do it all by himself. But regardless, this is the kind of game we need Clough to own the boards.
Yeah, and I think even if Clough doesn't own the boards, his size in this game alone could, I think, do a lot of things for Trey Kaufman-Renn on the glass. Like, I think there's a world Clough's size just takes up multiple bodies down low and opens things up for a 6'8" big like Kaufman-Renn, who hasn't been a great rebounder throughout his career, to start grabbing easy rebounds that he's never had before, being as, the only time he really played the four was next to an all-time rebounder who really didn't leave a ton of other rebounds for anybody else in Zach Edey. Like, just straight up playing next to Zach Edey, it's hard to be a good rebounder next to Zach Edey because he was such a dominant rebounder that he pulled in everything. There were no rebounds for you to get because he got it himself. And so I think that this will really be the first time that we'll see Trey Kaufman-Renn next to a five, like playing the four next to a five that's a good but not otherworldly dominant rebounder. And I think if there was one path to Kaufman-Renn being a good rebounder this year, it's that. It's like Clough is a problem on the boards enough so that people really focus on him and try to take him away, and things open up for Trey Kaufman-Renn on the other side. But I don't see him being this dominant, like one-on-one rebounder, but his size next to Clough is going to be really big for this team on the glass, I think, even though Benter has given you some plus rebounding at the four.
Absolutely. One guy for Alabama we haven't mentioned yet is Houston Millett, who started against who's Bama playing their first game?
North Dakota.
He started against North Dakota with both Holloway and Reitzel out. The four of them, I mean, that is as deep and talented a backcourt as you will find in college basketball. And the best player in the backcourt is Braden Smith. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Philon is easily the second best player, and it's a little bit of a pick-em, I feel like, between Holloway and Fletch. They're both very similar archetypes. Fletch obviously is more experienced. The battle in the backcourt between Philon and Braden is going to be fascinating to watch in this game. They're very different styles of player. Philon is much more physically dominant and a bit more of an aggressive scorer than Braden is. Braden, the better shooter, and obviously the much, much better passer, probably the better rebounder as well. So not that will necessarily have a huge impact on this game. How do you see that battle shaking out between Braden Smith and LeBaron Philon? Who do you think gets the better of that matchup? Do you think they guard each other at all during this game? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a matchup in the idea that they're possibly, I think it's fair to say, in my eyes, they're the two best point guards in the country right now. And I think, they're both going to be playing the point guard. They're both going to be the lead ball handlers for their teams. But I don't think either one is actually going to guard the other. I don't think they're going to do really anything similar throughout this game. Like, I don't think this is going to be a game where you just look up and it's like Braden Smith and LeBaron Philon going back and forth, trading tough buckets or anything. I think, you might see a lot of LeBaron Philon tough buckets, but Braden Smith is going to be a lot more spraying the ball around, getting his teammates involved, especially if Trey Kaufman-Renn's back, who's Purdue's engine shooting the basketball. I think it looks a little different from each guy. And they don't even guard each other. If I had to guess, I think that CJ Cox gets the LeBaron Philon assignment for Purdue, and I'm not entirely sure who gets the Braden Smith assignment for Alabama. I think it's going to be Houston Millett, but we'll see there. I think this is going to be a matchup in name only. I don't really think this is going to be much of a duel between these two, just because they won't guard each other and really won't do the same things either.
I will push back a little bit. I think there's a chance Philon guards Braden. Now, I think you're right. Initially, they'll probably stick Millett on him, assuming they start Millett. They might start Holloway. But if they start Millett again, he'll take the Braden assignment. Philon is their best defender at the guard spot, and they probably don't want to tire him out because they're going to need him offensively. But like they're not going to want to burn him out, running around guarding Braden all game. But I do think he will be assigned to Braden when Millett's off the floor because, Holloway has some length. You don't want him guarding Braden. Reitzel's a negative on the defensive end. Like, if Millett's not on the floor, Philon has to be the guy on Braden unless they're both off the floor, which I wouldn't expect them both to be off the floor for that reason.
Yeah, I just think the best defense that Purdue could possibly play on LeBaron Philon is having him guard Braden on the other end. Like if he is going to be responsible for the majority of the offensive load, which I think he's going to be asked to do against Purdue, while also being asked to be the point of attack guy against the best point guard in the country and one of the best point guards we've honestly ever seen in college basketball, it's going to be a long day for Alabama, I think. And that's why I kind of think they'll just start Holloway and Millett together. Like I think it's going to be a LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway, Houston Millett starting 1, 2, 3, and they'll put Millett on Braden if I had to guess. I mean, I think they probably put Philon on Fletch, but also that's like the Fletch Aiden Holloway matchup kind of seems inevitable, like two guys who just want to float around the perimeter and shoot threes. Now, Holloway showed a little bit more, I think, going to the basket against St. John's, and Fletch has shown a lot more throughout his career as well, being able to do a little bit off the bounce. But for the most part, it's two guys who want to float around on the perimeter and catch and shoot threes, and they're pretty dang good at it. So I think that matchup's inevitable, but I think Purdue would be in a good spot if Alabama tried to ask LeBaron Philon to guard Braden Smith.
I agree. I think that'd be ultimately a net positive for Purdue. On the other hand, I think it'd also be a net positive for Purdue if they stuck Holloway or Reitzel on Braden. Millett's averaging 25 minutes a game right now. He might play a little bit more if he's getting the primary defensive assignments, but they got other talented guards they want to get on the floor. I don't think they're just going to leave Millett out there for 35 minutes to guard Braden one-on-one. So he's going to have an advantageous matchup somewhere along the line, and I think it's going to be important for him to take advantage of that. Not that he can't cook whoever's guarding him, of course, but if he can punish Bama when they are forced to rotate other defenders at him, I think that's going to benefit Purdue significantly in this one. And one other thing, you mentioned at the beginning of the video, Trey Kaufman-Renn is expected to make his debut for Purdue in this game. We likely won't have word on that until a little bit later in the week officially, but he was a game-time decision for both Evansville and Oakland, and they likely held him out more as a precautionary measure. I believe it was said after the Evansville game that if this had been like a tournament game, he would have played. So obviously it's more of a cautious approach early in the season with their second-best player than a serious injury that needs to be monitored moving forward. But assuming he plays, how much do you think that impacts the play style Purdue has? Because you're taking Benter out and putting Trey Kaufman-Renn in the game, which takes a shooter off the floor. And so far, we've been playing a center with 4 shooters, including the center with 5 shooters of Jacobson's on the floor. So how do you see that altering Purdue's offense and pace in this one?
Yeah, I think it probably slows it down to a little bit. I think they'll still look to run in spots, but I have a feeling after the first 2 games went so poorly when they tried to run as aggressively as they did, they just got killed on the glass. And I think that Painter realized that a little bit. He made some comments in the press conference after the Oakland game, about noticing the rebounding and things like that. And so I think that it wouldn't shock me for this Purdue team to just play slower in general because they want to rebound a little better. I mean, this Alabama team is going to force you to rebound better on the defensive glass. You can't have 2-3 guys leaking out every possession. So I think they'll inherently play a little slower to try and help with the rebounding a little bit. But I think the half court offense looks so much smoother just because there are times where guys are just kind of looking around like, well, where's the guy that goes and sets the screen for Braden and then gets the dump down pass? He's here now. Like that's there. We're just going to get the best action in the country, which is a Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman high ball screen. I mean, it was one of the most unguardable actions in the country last year. It's going to be one of the most unguardable actions in the country this year. You've got shooters on the wings still with Fletcher and whoever you want to go with at the 2 guard spot. Going to be CJ to start, if I had to guess, as he did the first 2 games. So I think the offense it won't miss a beat. And if anything, I think this helps the rebounding numbers. I think Trey Kaufman brings a level of physicality that this team has dearly missed as well. I think this will be a welcome addition, as any All-American would be to a team when they get an All-American back.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does naturally slow Purdue's pace down a little bit because we're going to be more of a half-court offense with Trey Kaufman running the game. I think the desire to force up some questionable shots and transition is going to be a little bit less desirable when we just wait for Trey to get down the floor and can dump it off to him for a much higher percentage look, especially against an Alabama front. I don't think really going to be able to slow him down at all. I mean, this is a great matchup for him. He's going to be more physical and just a better scorer than anyone is defensively in this game. So this is an opportunity for him to announce himself to college basketball. First big test of Purdue's season, first game back, second half of the second week of basketball, comes in and does what he did to Bama last year, which was also a bit of his breakout game nationally. He'd been scoring well early, and then he came into Mackey against Bama and just absolutely hosed that front court, including Cliff Amorie and Grant Nelson, to the tune of Nato saying after the game he just didn't know he could do that and didn't know he had to treat Trey Kaufman as an actual threat in the way that he obviously proved to be the rest of the season. So this could be a similar kind of game script for him in this one.
Yeah, I mean, look back at that St. John's game. Where did St. John's have a lot of successes in the front court? Zuby Ejiofor himself had 27 and 10 with a couple of blocks. He was 9 for 12 from the field as well. Like, not only did he score 27 points, but he did it easily, not really missing shots. And when you watch the film, I mean, he was kind of getting whatever he wanted at the rim. Bryce Hopkins added 19 and 4 himself. He wasn't quite as efficient, but just more of that kind of idea that St. John's got whatever they wanted inside from their 2 bigs. And the reason I think St. John's had some trouble was they just didn't get the production from the guard spot. They weren't able to outplay that Alabama backcourt in a way that I think Purdue's backcourt is capable of doing. I'm not sure it's fair to expect them to, but the floor to play with Alabama's backcourt is there. I fully expect this Purdue backcourt to, at the very least, play with Alabama's backcourt, and I think that allows this Purdue front court that should be better than Alabama's front court to kind of run its course and do what they do in the front court, and that's score a lot of points, a la Trey Kaufman ran. So,
yeah, I don't know if I would expect Purdue's backcourt to keep up scoring wise with Bama's backcourt, just because I think you're right. I think the front court is going to be relied upon for a lot of scoring, primarily Trey Kaufman ran. It wouldn't surprise me if he has 30 or 35 in this game. I mean, he can basically have as many points as the coaching staff wants him to in this game, as long as he's not missing bunnies. But I mean, Clough will probably have some putbacks and stuff if he's able to get good positioning on the rebounds. Purdue likes to go to a little bit of a post-up game with Daniel Jacobson sometimes, so it wouldn't surprise me to see them use him in that capacity. And then, if Trey is on the floor at the same time as Jacobson, he's going to Jacobson, I would expect to spend some time on the perimeter to try and pull some guys out of the paint. You could get some looks from 3, which haven't really been going down for him yet this year, but they will. So I expect the Purdue front court to take on a lot of the scoring punch. Obviously, Benner's going to be jacking up threes, pun intended there, whenever he's on the floor. But yeah, I think play-wise, Braden could have 15 assists in this game. Yeah, I think this is a good matchup for Purdue in both front court and back court sense.
I agree. I think with that, we will kind of move into predictions here. Ken Pom has this game as a 1-point loss for Purdue, 86-85. I believe that changed with the updated Ken Pom prediction or projections from both the Oakland game and the St. John's game that Alabama played this weekend. So I do believe going into the year, this was originally projected as a win for Purdue, but with the line change, it is now a 1-point loss for Purdue in the projections. Pretty much a pick 'em. I think that's fair with it being on the road, and I'll let you kind of pick. I believe that we're both 1-1 against the spread.
Yeah, interestingly, even after the Oakland game dropped Purdue from 1st to 7th in Ken Pom, this is the only game Ken Pom projects us to lose the entire season. And that includes a home win against an Illinois team that is shooting up rankings, both analytics and human polls right now. So that's what you get on a true road environment with one of the best teams in college basketball, one of the best home courts in college basketball. It would not surprise me if the issues that we've seen Purdue have against Evansville and Oakland kind of rear their ugly heads again against Alabama, and we're just kind of not able to have the horses to keep up with them if they're grabbing rebounds at a higher rate than we are. But that said, I think this is a bad matchup for Alabama. Just straight up, I don't think they have the front court physicality to keep up with us. And if you're trying to beat Purdue simply by outplaying Braden Smith, I don't think that's going to work for you. And I think that's what has to happen in this game. I think for Bama to win this game, things need to happen. They need to be the more physically dominant rebounding team, which is certainly possible based on how Purdue has played for large stretches so far this season. And they need Philon to be better than Braden Smith. Both of those things are certainly possible. Philon is a lottery talent, and on any given day, Braden Smith has a good, not great game, and Philon shows out and looks like the top 5 pick. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. I don't want this to come off as me saying like, Purdue's got this in the bag. I just think this is a bad matchup for Alabama. I think Trey Coffin-Rent's going to be able to get whatever he wants around the basket. I think Purdue's a better shooting team than Alabama, and Bama's going to shoot a lot of threes in this game. If Purdue's able to make them one and done on the glass, offensive end, I think they win this game. I think it's close. I don't really see Purdue running away with this one, but maybe pulling away a little bit in the last 4 minutes or so of the game. Hit a couple shots Bama's missing in quick transition opportunities. Purdue comes down the other end, hits some. Give me like an 8-point win, like 93-85.
Yeah, you said it. Like, this Alabama team has taken 62 threes through 2 games. That's over 30 threes a game, and they are shooting 30%. That's not, I think, a fantastic recipe. And now it worked against the St. John's team that also can't shoot and wanted to play as fast as possible. And somehow that game got to 105-96 and just breakneck pace. But this is an Alabama team that's going to want to shoot a lot of threes and not make a ton of them. And I'm not sure how well that recipe works against a Purdue team that I think will slow it down a little bit and just be one of the more efficient teams in the country. I think when you look at Purdue, this is a team that can limit possessions and just be wildly more successful than everyone else because of how efficient this team is, especially offensively. I think this is a rough matchup for Alabama. I think the one thing they have going for them is the LeBaron Philon. I'm not sure that Purdue has anyone to guard Philon. We'll see what Cox and Harris are able to do on Philon, but I think he kind of gets whatever he wants. But I think the same is true of Trey Kaufman-Renn and to a somewhat lesser extent Braden Smith as well. I think Alabama has a couple things they can throw at Braden, but I don't think they have enough to really actually stop him. And Trey Kaufman-Renn, as you said, is just going to get whatever he wants. And add in the fact that I don't think that Alabama has a 5 that's really going to be a true threat, kind of scoring the basketball or offensively in general. And I think that you could see the size of Purdue centers also help affect Philon at the rim. A lot of his game is getting to the rim and finishing there. 7'4" Daniel Jacobson for the 16 to 17 minutes he's going to be on the game is going to be a huge deterrent to that. Like, I don't care how good you are as a 6'1" guard. It sucks trying to finish over a guy who's 7'4" with those arms and those shot blocking instincts. And I think Phylon might struggle against a little bit of the size inside. That's the pathway I could see to Purdue kind of, keeping him in check. And I think Purdue wins this game, as you said, pretty comfortably, but like 6, 7, maybe 8 points, kind of a close game there. But Purdue pulls away at the end through free throws.
Yeah, I can absolutely see it. It's definitely going to have to be sort of trial by fire, keeping Phylon in check. Like you said, the one thing I don't think we talked about enough in this preview is just how dominant Phylon is and how bad Purdue's been at guarding the paint. Phylon's going to be able to get whatever he wants in this game, I think. It's going to take some Herculean efforts from Cox and Harris to keep him in check. And if they can just make him a little bit less efficient than he's used to being, I think that's going to be a huge win for Purdue.
Yeah, I think that's where the size comes into effect. We saw a little bit of rim protection from Clough last game. We know Jacobson has it. I'm not sure the rim protection from Clough translates a ton this game, but with Alabama's center spot being, kind of a net negative offensively, like I think that help side is going to be there. And these are some big bodies for Phylon to try and finish over. That's the one thing that I don't think St. John's had that Purdue has defensively is some real size underneath the basket. They play Zuby Ejiofor, who's like 6'8", and not a true rim protection threat, I don't think. And I think that led to some success for Phylon. We'll see how the size for Purdue does, but we are going on 37 minutes on this preview. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap it up. And excited to see some more Purdue basketball on Thursday, and we will have a recap out after that game as well, as always. So thanks for listening, everyone.